Hi guys, welcome to InPowher with Athena today. She is also known as AKA Astrophysicist Barbie. So introduce yourself and explain how you even got that name Astrophysicist Barbie.
Yeah, so my name is Athena Brensberger, and I actually got a Barbie doll from my dad she was titled Astrophysicist Barbie. This was only like 2 months ago, so this was during quarantine.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I have a shirt just like her. I'm like, this is totally me. Like, I studied astrophysics back in college. I'm like pursuing a science communicator career now, but I'm also a fashion model. So I'm also doing a lot of like glam stuff. So I'm like, oh my God, this is totally me. I'm like, cause I wear a lot of pink. Like I'm super, like I used to be
Yeah.
called a Barbie doll when I was little. So I was like, oh, this is totally like a merged, thing. And I'm like, I should just put that on my Instagram because then it's going to make sense with all the like bubbly, colorful pictures, but also a lot of data information about astrophysics.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's perfect. I remember, so I met Athena at the Sports Illustrated Swim Search, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was so much fun. We got up at like 4 a.m. that day.
Yeah, that day was insane, but also so empowering. I met so many amazing women. Like I've already had another woman that I met from that on the podcast too. Like
Yeah.
crazy empowering. So I met you. You told me that you were pretty much worked with NASA and you were dealing with like space and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, whoa, what? I was like, you are gorgeous and super intelligent. I was like, this is my kind of woman. Yes. So what kind of work do? You work with a bunch of different organizations or institutes. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I created astroathens.com, which is like my Instagram. It's all social media platforms, but it's also my website where I just started doing like videos about the new discovery in space and also kind of keeping it more at like a basic level of understanding, like our world, our
Yeah.
universe, what a galaxy is, what a black hole is. And then I started like delving in so much deeper with like, rocket launches. So then I actually applied for a NASA program to go do coverage as a social media like ambassador to
So cool.
represent NASA and go to their launch. And so that was actually 4 years ago. And ever since then, I've been to 6 launches and it's just been this ongoing thing. And it was like it's been so awesome because NASA has so many opportunities to actually like invite people of all walks of life, like whatever career you're in, musicians, artists, everything, to come and experience a launch. And that's when I was like, oh, this needs to be like my thing. Like I want to do more coverage and actually bring a voice to space exploration and be a public advocate for it. So I've been doing things like with my Astro Athens like LLC, like I created the company as itself. And I've like partnered not only obviously with NASA for launches, but right now I'm actually doing classes with kids on a website called Dexter Learning. And so Dexter is a school that's actually based out in Texas, all about advocating for like science, STEM, 3D printing. And so I have a class on there called Cosmic Playground. Actually, right before this episode that we shot, I was outside shooting off a bottle rocket, which I have like right here. I like shot this off in my backyard. So it was like so much fun. Yeah, it's just awesome. I love it.
Dude, I love that too. I had no idea that you were doing that. Like educating the youth is so important because I feel like there's
Yeah.
so much that I wish I knew when I was younger that wasn't there. Like I would love to see astrophysicist Barbie teaching me how rockets work. And speaking of how rockets work,
Yeah.
what happened this weekend, SpaceX.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It was so incredible. The Demo2 Mission, which stands for Demonstration 2. This was an incredible experience. It was for the Crew Dragon capsule. So the reason it's called Crew Dragon is because it's a crew of people that are on board. And before that was actually the Dragon cargo. So it had like supplies, like experiments for science research. It had like toilet paper and food for the astronauts on the space station. So they do everyday human things just like us, like they're eating food, they're growing crops on the space station. And so this was so important because it's been nearly a decade that we've launched like astronauts from United States soil to the space station. So the last time was actually the space shuttle program, and that ended in 2011. So ever since then, like every time, astronauts were launching to space, which was still happening, it was actually launching out of Kazakhstan. So we were partnered with the Russian cosmonaut program and launching on a Soyuz capsule. So there's the Soyuz is like a whole nother, it's essentially like the Crew Dragon capsule, but through Russia.
Right.
And that's
Okay.
how we would launch. And so this is just so monumental because like it's been so long since this has even happened. And
Right.
not only is that the exciting part, but also SpaceX is a private company. NASA,
Which is insane.
yeah, which is like a whole nother thing. This is the first time there's actually been like astronauts launched to space through a private company. And what that means is like Elon started this company from scratch, went to investors, like built up his own capital to actually like create this company, got like contracts with like different satellite companies and made it happen. And this is the first time we're seeing a partnership between a public and private company. It's incredible. I mean, so NASA is public, meaning it's, you know, funded through the federal government, through our tax dollars. And to have those two partnering together, this is revolutionary, really. Like this is starting a whole new, not just era, but like, I think way to sort of look at how we're going to partner with people in the future. Just all of humanity too. It's like they're going to now be doing things like also with like JAXA, which is the Japanese space agency, and then Russia. And it's just, I don't know, it's so unique and so awesome.
Yeah, that's crazy. Elon Musk is a mastermind. Like, this man is unstoppable.
Yeah. It's crazy too, because like everyone was telling him like, no, it's not going to be possible to land a rocket, which he lands for the first stage of the rocket. So that, So that's incredible. And what that just means is it's the first part that actually produces all of that fuel to have the initial liftoff of the surface of Earth. And then it separates and that part can actually land and then be reused. So he's trying to make rocket launches to be as common as like flying on an airplane. And going to space is common as flying on an airplane. Like just, you know, brush it off, like refuel it, check, okay, launch again. And that's great because economically and also environmentally, this is so important because like, yes, like rocket science is something that has had an impact generally just on the environment. So it's important that we not only find ways to reuse it, but like work on new like evolutionary ways to like create different types of like fuel, for instance, fueling the rocket more with cleaner energy. And this is something they're working on. I mean, especially him being obviously also the CEO of Tesla, creator of Tesla, and like well, you know, that's a whole nother thing too, electric cars. And and it's just like it's amazing too. It's
That's incredible. Okay, so this is the first one that has come down and landed on itself. So what happened in the past? Did they just fall in the ocean? Did they fall into the atmosphere? Where did they go?
Yeah, so typically they would collect them. They would try to collect them and then discard them. They would typically fall into the ocean. We actually still have the rockets land in the ocean. There's like a landing pad, which Elon called Of Course I Still Love You. That's the name of the landing pad. Yes.
Why?
And the landing pad, I know it's so, and then he has a boat called Mr. Steven, which has a giant like net that catches an area called the fairing. So on top of the rocket, it's like an eggshell that encapsulates the cargo.
Wow.
And if there's a satellite in there, like for our weather, to tell us our weather on our phone, that satellite, when it's getting ready, this part opens and falls down to Earth. And you can catch those and reuse them. So they would get caught in a net on a boat called Mr. Steven. Now, keep in mind, you know, the tides are really, really strong out in the middle of like the Atlantic Ocean. So it's, sorry.
No,
and so it's been like super crazy. But in previous times, a lot of times it would just get discarded. And, you know, that's not, you know, it's just not economical. It's not good for our environment. So another thing too, is also with satellites that are, you know, deorbited in space. Once they're done processing information, or there's a lot of solar radiation, which can cause damages. So stuff coming from the sun, really charged, highly charged particles. Once that satellite is done, a lot of times they put it in an area, which is like known as like the graveyard orbit, or like they'll deorbit it and put it in a zone, the graveyard zone, where it'll kind of just float. And so a lot of companies are working on ways to collect space junk, because there is a lot of space junk out there, and that's
wild.
Yeah, there's so much stuff. It's like so crazy to go on and on about this, but so
in the past, they would just like go into an orbit somewhere and just kind of like how you would have trash in places for what are they, dumpster areas? I'm blanking. Dump yards. Dump yards. Almost like that for stuff taken to space.
Yeah, and the thing is too is each country who owns that satellite, no one else is allowed to touch it. That's part of space policy, and so it's space politics literally. And
Right.
so if say like you and I make a company where it's able to go up there, we have like a rubber band, and
Uh-huh.
it's able to encapsulate a capsule to then bring back down to Earth, like it catches a satellite, and we're like, cool,
Right.
let's bring that back down and find ways to refurbish it. If that satellite is property of another country, they have every right to actually like have major issues with us, to press charges against us, to say, hey, that's my property, you're not allowed to touch that. So that's another big thing that's really important, is setting up space policy when it comes to the collection of space junk, because there might be space junk that we're leaving up there, but we won't let say Japan or Korea come up with like a new form of technology to collect that, and we're like, that's technically ours, you can't touch it. We run into those issues too. It's so crazy. There's so many aspects to
Yeah.
space.
Wow. That is something I've never even thought of. I feel like you see just kind of satellites in space, but you never really think about everything else that we send up there that might still be there.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. And the thing is too, like right now, Elon Musk is setting up something called Starlink. He's already launched, I think, over 100 of the satellites.
Mm.
And the way that it works is, yeah, you heard about it.
I've heard about this. Yes. Keep
Yeah.
going.
Yep. I think it's going to be a total of like 650 satellites, I believe, that's going to essentially like surround the entire Earth. And
Mhm.
it's supposed to help bring like high-speed internet to areas that don't really have internet, rural areas,
Right.
or developing countries, so that they actually have access to the internet. Now, of course, it's actually frustrating a lot of astronomers because it does interfere with stargazing. But the way that they're trying to set it up is they're trying to create now anti-reflective
Mm.
features, where you see on my jacket super reflective. They're trying to come up
Right.
with now anti-reflective, so that the sun doesn't reflect off of it, disturbing the ones looking to the telescope. So they're coming up in new ways. I actually have like total confidence in them like finding ways to partner together, because
Yeah.
astronomers, rocket science, it's all about exploring space. So
True.
yeah, I mean, I myself, spent like years studying like astrophysics. Like my research in college actually it was through the NASA space grant. So I was
Wow.
doing like research under NASA through images taken by the Hubble Space Telescope of an area in the night sky. Do you know Orion, the Orion Constellation?
Yes.
It's like those three stars, and it looks
Yes.
like his belt. Yeah.
Yes. Ryan's belt. Yes.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So next time that you're out, it's usually an evening, a winter constellation. But if you look underneath one of the belts, the lowest one, you might see a
Mhm.
blob, kind of like fuzzy blob. You should be able to see it with the unaided eye, meaning
Uh-huh.
without a telescope. And as long as it's dark by you, no light pollution, that blob is actually a nebula. It's called the Orion Nebula, where I did my research. And a nebula is a big cloud of dust and gas that resulted from a star that died. But how
Yes.
beautiful is this? It's a recycling process. Everything that was released from that star when it died is now seeding new star life. So baby stars are forming. It's called a stellar nursery. And yeah, and so that's what my research was about, because I'm obsessed with like how space is this constant recycling process that we see. And from a star that died, everything that made up its life is now allowing other stars to form. And then when those stars form, planets can form around them over a long period of time. And then, okay, is there life on those planets? Like, is there life beyond Earth? Like, yeah, there definitely has to be. The calculations show that there's a huge probability of there actually being, habitable planets, exoplanets.
Right. Have you heard about all that UFO stuff?
Yeah, I was researching a little bit. I actually didn't dive too far into it, to be honest with you, just because I was like, I like started reading some stuff, and then, yeah, I didn't spend too much time
Mm.
researching it, to be honest. I actually don't remember where even the footage was from,
Uh,
but I know it died out really quickly, like
the
through social
COVID.
media.
Yeah.
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 What did you read about it?
I listened to Joe Rogan's podcast where he actually has the pilot who was in there while they got the footage. And I also watched a documentary and also Joe Rogan interviewing someone who worked at some place under Area 51.
Hmm.
And he claims that he had worked on spaceships. And it is really interesting. I'll like link the stuff below. I'll share it to you.
Yeah.
It's insane because you're watching the documentary, you're like, okay, like And, people try to discredit him along the way because there's been nothing shown like this by the government. And technically, the government, it's its duty to inform its citizens about stuff they find.
Mhm.
But they weren't doing this where he was working. And he eventually, I think, quit or got laid off. Something happened, and he went to the news and told them what he had found, because he's like, this is, the citizens' right to know this. And then apparently the FBI went and tried to erase his history, deleted his birth certificate,
Oh my
said that he had
God.
never worked at the place. But if you go back, there's still like a few files left where it shows that where he worked there. But it's just like this crazy story. And at first watching the documentary, I was like, it could really swing either way. But then once he sat down and talked to Joe Rogan, and when in interviews, people ask you questions that really pull sometimes.
Mm.
And he was really asking those questions pulling. And this man had information that there's no way that you could make this up. It was so fascinating listening to him about what he worked on. So he worked on this space. I'm sorry, I'm just like going on about this. But
Yeah, no, share. I want to learn
it's
about
so
it.
cool. He worked on one of the spaceships. He said one day all the gates where he worked were open, and he could see that there were 8 other spaceships, and they all looked completely different than the one he was working on. And the one he was working on had 3 different parts. So it had down where I guess the engines were, the place where I guess you could direct it, and
Mhm.
then the level with more of the mechanics, and then the top level where it had, I guess, a little dome where people could go in, but it wasn't people. It was, I guess, aliens could go in and make stuff move and work. And he said he went in the top part one time. So when they work on the spacecrafts, they're not allowed to collaborate with people that work on the other parts of the spacecrafts, because they
Mm.
didn't want them to know more information about it. So they would rather have less knowledge of the people working and more secrecy than to solve things faster, which was incredibly interesting to me. And
Mm.
so he pretty much talked about this unit called, what is it? A15,
Mm.
some,
Okay.
something like that. Form 50, I'm blanking, but I'll share it and you'll understand. And so he said he went
Yeah.
into the top one time, and there were 2 chairs in there, and they were like child chairs, like children's chairs size. And it was just crazy. He said there was no buttons or anything. There was just a little spot where you could put the fuel, the A15 element 15, that's what it's, element 15 in it, to make it go. And it used gravitational pull to move. So he explained how it has this gravitational pull around it as almost a heart. So he said they would take him out to fly him every so often, and he would stand under it and look up, and you cannot see it because of the gravitational pull. And I don't know, it was just crazy. I'm getting off track here, but
That sounds insane, though. I definitely need to research this more because I'm surprised they just, I think it was because I was right when COVID got really, really bad. And so I just
yep,
it wasn't even important at that point. But
yeah.
yeah, definitely share that with me in the audience because I
Yes,
think that
I
would be
totally
very
will. And that's
interesting.
the thing. I remember seeing little memes like, there's freaking, what is it, aliens out there, and people don't even care. Like, that's when you know it's bad. And I was like,
Yeah.
that is very true. That is
Wow.
very true. So I'll send all those links. I'll show you. You guys can do your research. You can come up with your own assumptions. I'm gonna be honest, I
Yeah.
think there's aliens out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, too, what's really interesting is we still don't actually know how humans got here.
Mm,
That's something. Even the theory of evolution, they're trying to understand how all of life got here. Let me correct
right.
that. Not about humans. They don't understand how all of life even got here on Earth. We know that it's, close to the sun. It's within an area called the
Right.
habitable or Goldilocks zone. But as far as how biological life actually formed, there's this theory called panspermia that says that most likely some type of space rock, like a meteor or an asteroid, collided with Earth that actually contains some type of microbe on it, some type of bacterial thing that possibly could have spawned life here. And so that's something really interesting because it's still not fully known how, life
Right.
can just sort of happen. It's just like, so that's one of the theories that scientists are still trying to figure out right now is how did life actually start to form here, and
Mhm.
we understand obviously, like I said, everything with the theory of evolution of how the process of everything happened, but that initial moment, it's just like the Big Bang, that initial moment is still where the big question mark lies. It's crazy. That's actually, I've gotten so into like theoretical physics and like quantum mechanics because of that bigger
Right.
question of what exactly is happening all around us right now. Can we not access other dimensions that may possibly exist?
Right.
And it's very probable we might just be at that state of evolution of the human mind where we haven't actually fully been able to see other things through another lens. We can see color, texture, surface, but maybe we still can't see totally depth. Like we can see depth because of shadow, but everything
Right.
still technically is 2D, like how we see it. When we see it, it's still like, okay, we know that's depth because there's a shadow cast. That it's like when you do drawing from life, same exact concept.
Mm.
So to me, I always like to think like that it is very possible that there may be, more dimensions out there, and we just can't actually access them currently. Or we can, but we just don't know how to.
Right.
It's so crazy. I'm so into
Dude,
this
this
stuff.
is crazy.
Yeah.
This also makes me wonder, scientists that are religious, do they totally ban the idea that we came from an asteroid, or do people not talk about that all?
I'm actually kind of glad you brought it up because that's been part of my own self journey is
Mm.
exploring actually when I was in college, I studied theology and political science before actually completely going to astrophysics.
Okay.
And that's actually because I was really bad at math growing up and
Yeah.
felt like I had no future as an astrophysicist, and was like, my other things I'm passionate about is actually like doing like political science debate teams, and then also understanding theology because I want to try and understand like our purpose. And
Right.
so that being said, I think that what happens is with religion that kind of has that explanation of how things formed, like why they formed.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like with science, with as far as panspermia can go, it's like that space rock that was flying through space that could have spawned life. A very like strongly religious belief person in their faith could say God allowed for that rock to fly and to crash and to cause life. And so that's what really brings up the debate a lot, because even Stephen Hawking, like before passing away, it's like he was still working on something, his theory known as the no boundary proposal.
Mm.
Meaning there was never actually a boundary. Like there was never a point of singularity, which means that there was never an indefinite point of nothingness. There actually
Oh.
was always something. So crazy, right? But time did not exist yet. This is what he was working on. He was saying there was always something that existed, but time did not exist yet. And the moment time existed is when expansion happened, and then the universe started growing. And
Right.
so that's something he was working on right before he passed away. And I mean, Carl Sagan, also great science communicator, passed away. He said it as well, that, I think that spirituality and understanding of a higher entity goes directly like in a intertwined way with science. It actually is a unity, but we have to understand how that unity happens, and that kind of then goes into metaphysics. Metaphysics is like a whole nother kind of let's figure out what's actually happening here and philosophize more. But also that's how astronomy started, was through philosophy.
Right.
So
It's
I
all
think
kind of intertwined.
yes, completely
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. It's such a crazy, yeah. I always end up getting off on that tangent. I'm like, I can go into like, yes, black holes, wormholes, and then what's really out there, like multiple
Right.
universes, like,
This
but
whole conversation just feels so psychedelic.
yeah, I know. It's so crazy, but it's like, it's our innate, like, it's just our innate, like, human experience.
Right.
It's intertwined in us. We're always asking who we are, where we came from, where we're going. It's a big thing that I think that curiosity has to remain in us. It's what makes us so special, and that's why we're always seeing, like, people evolving in new ways, especially technology right now. It's crazy.
Right.
So,
Dude.
but it's special, and I think that's why
Yeah.
also art has to be tied in with science. Art is extremely important, whether it's music, which is like, oh my gosh, music triggers all of the senses. That is something completely new as well. And that also, it can transcend through so many different mediums and can create like such a beautiful thing, like has a
Yeah.
vibrational entity to it. It has a sound to it. It has an emotion to it. It has a
Right.
visual to it, because you can picture when the sound waves are spiking, and Yeah, there's just so much. There's so much. I'm going into like a whole philosophical
No,
world right now, but
I love it. I'm here for it. Okay, another question that I want to ask you is, so astrophysicist Barbie, I love it because it's just so girly. And sometimes when people think of astrophysicists, they think of men, especially
yeah.
in the science world. And everyone, since I was younger, I remember people pushing for women to be in STEM, pushing for women to be in STEM, 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 STEM. Did you see an incline in women participating in STEM like as you were in college or even right now?
I think right now I'm definitely seeing more of an increase for sure. I think that when I was little, like first time I learned about space was when I was 12 years old. I mean, I grew up in New York City, so like there's so much light pollution. Like I wasn't like stargazing every
So
night, to be
much.
honest. Yeah, like I was definitely not one of those stories that many astronomers have where they're like, yeah, when I was a little girl, I was looking up the moon. Like I didn't have that. Like I look outside and I'm like, oh yeah, look at all the city lights. You know, like I did
Right.
not see the stars. I'd be lucky if I saw one star. Most likely it wasn't even a star. Most likely it was a planet, and it was probably Jupiter because
Yeah.
that's really bright in the night sky.
Mm.
And so for me, it like when I was little, I was like really into the dancing and the creativity and being on stage. Like I loved art. And I thought, you know, science, it's fascinating. I have to be part of this one day, but I don't know if I can be real with myself and actually have the skill set for it. And I was like, you know, I won't
Wow.
be taken seriously because I'm bubbly and I'm blonde and I'm, you know, whatever. Like I say like a lot, you know, and then
Yeah,
it just like hit me one day. Like it actually was a mentor of mine that was so important to have. And it's so valuable to have a mentor
it
who
is.
believes in you, really is. And he said to me, he's just like, I actually had broke my hand from playing football, so I had to miss his class for 2 weeks. He was my astronomy 101 teacher. And this was when I said, I can't do physics. I need to go into political science.
Mhm.
And I decided to take his class anyway. And he like read one of my papers, which was extra credit for making up for the weeks that I lost, you know, from getting the surgery done on my hand. And he was like, "You're a physics major, right? Like you're so passionate about this. Like the way that you worded everything in your paper, like it comes through." And I was like, "Nah, like I'm a political science major. Like my math is really bad." He's like, "But your passions are." He's like, "That's it." He's like, "You're gonna, you know." He's like, if you want to," he's like, "You're going to switch over to a physics major like now." And he's like, "I want you to do research this summer at the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. Like I have a NASA space grant. Like, let me know if that's something you'd like to do." And I just was like, oh man, like my life is about to change. And then I started learning about the power of having that female essence to, you know, that just the diversity in general in
Mhm.
science, the different viewership, the way that we process things differently. That's what's so beautiful about the human race, is how different we all are. We have to embrace that. We
Right.
have more in common than we have differences, is my true belief.
Mhm.
But I think it's in those differences that we have to take notice and figure out, where am I not comprehending something, and where can someone else comprehend that, from just maybe the way that they troubleshooted problems growing up, maybe the way that they understood how to make solutions from problems. And that's when I think we started seeing, obviously, like, you know, more women in science. But it's so important because like we want to show that representation to the human race. Like there's a
Right.
whole population out there that feels not included because they don't see themselves like, you know, going to space. I have this great poster, actually. I just put it away. I'm about to hang it up later. I'm getting a picture frame for it. And
Mhm.
it's a poster from NASA of all the women of color that have been part of NASA's journey. The women have gone to space. Mae Jemison, oh my gosh, she is incredible. And first African-American female to go to space. And then there's like, of course, Hidden Figures. If you haven't seen the movie, you have to watch that. And it's about the computers, which were human beings, who would calculate how to actually get astronauts to space. And they
Wow.
were a vital part in, I think it was in the Mercury and then Gemini and then eventually Apollo,
Mhm.
of getting people to the moon, you know. And it's so
Yeah.
important. And they were women of color. And it's like that, this was during the civil rights movement. And
Wow.
so it's so extraordinary. And in the movie, there's this moment, it's my favorite scene, where the administrator, he like just bashes off the bathroom sign and is like, there's no more like white toilets, there's no more black toilets. He's like, everyone pees where they want to pee. He's like, at NASA we all pee the same color. He's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, we all should be in the same facilities, we all should be in the same buildings, we do not need to be segregated. And that's the, because this is a bigger mission. It's about going to the moon for the entire planet. And I think that that mindset is what really lays over into the youth, into the kids, into the younger generations, the Artemis generation, which is Generation Z. And the reason we're calling it Artemis is because the next mission to the moon is the Artemis Mission.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the twin sister of Apollo, who actually happens to be the goddess of the moon. And that name holds like really dear to me. Actually, Apollo and Artemis were the names I wanted since I was 16 for my future children. Super crazy. And I'm like, this is insane that NASA chose the name Artemis. Like no one knew about that name, about that goddess.
Right.
And I'm like, this is insane. So, and that's what's going to, be bringing women for the first time to the moon.
Wait, so when is that? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So the program right now, the goal is 2024. It's very soon. I feel like it may be a bit later, especially considering everything with COVID right now. But the goal is 2024. So right now they're building a rocket called the Space Launch System, or SLS.
And is that through NASA? Or is it through SpaceX?
So that rocket is through NASA.
Okay.
But they are now going to partner with SpaceX as well.
Okay.
And what SpaceX is developing is something known as Starship, which is what's going to bring the astronauts from the orbit around the moon to the surface of the moon. So Starship is going to be a transporting vehicle to bring the astronauts from the orbit down to the surface, which is awesome.
Okay, so how does that even happen? Does it like latch onto it and safely bring it down, or is it like have something where it, I don't know, sends a signal? It's like, follow me. How does that happen?
Actually, pretty much, yes. So if you were to see back in Apollo, there was like a few different compartments. There was the lunar module. There was the Saturn V rocket itself, which I'm actually building a Lego set of. And the rocket would take off. It would have attached to it, I believe they're using the Orion spacecraft for this, is what they're working on right now. And then that's going to launch to space. Starship is going to launch to space. They're going to connect to each other while in orbit. The astronauts would go through that. That's going to disconnect, and then Starship will land. There are some amazing infographics that I would love for you to share, like maybe in this video or something, that I'll send to you, because that better visualizes and explains it than me trying to use my hands. But it's super cool, and these are such delicate things. But there's games where kids can play online to learn what it's like to dock these things. Like the launch on Saturday, it was the same type of concept. The space station is orbiting at like 400,000 kilometers a second, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's a speed, moving super fast around Earth, and sees 9 sunsets a day. And then you have the Crew Dragon coming, and this is moving, and this is moving, and they have to somehow move together and then dock.
Wow.
And then that's how the astronauts got onto it. So they're still moving while it's now docked, and it's super delicate. But there's like simulation games Elon Musk made where kids can play with it and like learn what it's like. So then you're literally training the youth in like out there online, everyone in the world.
Wait, and what is this called? Like, what is this software that he's created called, or is it a website, or what is it?
Yeah, it's ISS, which stands for International Space Station. ISS Docking Simulator. And I think that's the full name. I think that's the website. The website is like isssimulator.com or something like that. But if you just type in like ISS Simulator, you can play it. And I like it better on my phone than on the computer, because like I guess I'm not used to the keyboard. So on my phone, the touch screen, I like docked immediately on the first try. And I was like, but on my computer, it took me like 30 tries and I still couldn't get it. So I'm like, wow, okay. Like, yeah, it's crazy. And the astronauts on the Crew Dragon have a touch screen. So they're actually like doing that. And they have gloves that are like touchscreen sensitive gloves. Their helmets are 3D printed. Like, it's so high fashion. Like, I love the spacesuits.
But it is, if you look at it, because their spacesuits are so much smaller than they used to be. Or the last time we sent people to Earth, they were in these like marshmallow suits, walking around like this. And this time they're like walking to the aircraft or spaceship just like this, like it's not clothes, like a winter day jacket maybe.
Yeah, it looked like a ski suit. Like it was literally like something you'd wear when you go skiing. Like it was so sleek. It was amazing. One big thing for that is I'm not too sure about that. I'm not sure if it's allowed to be, if they're built to be outside of the space station, because there's 2 different types of spacesuits. Those big chunky ones are known as EVA, which is extravehicular spacesuit, EVA. I forgot what A stands for. I don't know, whatever. And so pretty
Aliens.
much one of them is built for being out in space where it's a vacuum. There's like no air anywhere. And so the suits need to be strong for that. Then there's the intravehicular activity. That's what the A stands for, activity. Intravehicular activity, which means when you're inside the space station, they can be thinner, they can be more sleek.
Right.
So that was kind of the main reason why some of them were thinner compared to back in the day. But I believe these SpaceX suits are actually okay to be out on a spacewalk on, but I'm not 100% sure. I definitely want to check into that. But it's crazy. Like, it's just, I can't wait for Fashion Week. Hopefully Fashion Week happens with like, hopefully COVID like starts to recover. We all can recover from this. But like Fashion Week's going to be lit, dude. It's going to be insane. Like, we already have been seeing like NASA, like everywhere, and this like pink space jacket. I literally did like 7 or 8 videos yesterday doing runway walks in my living room of all my space outfits. And I'm like, dude, there's so much. There's so much.
Do you know any brands or designers that might have intentions to do something with it specifically?
Yeah. So 4 years ago, Chanel actually launched a model rocket off of their runway in Paris for Paris Fashion Week, which was incredible. It was the one in February. I believe it was 4 years ago. And then Nick Graham, who is a designer for men's suits, he actually had Buzz Aldrin, Apollo astronaut, and Bill Nye the Science Guy walk down his runway wearing space-inspired suits. Yeah, incredible. I know. I was actually listening to the Bill Nye the Science Guy song earlier, like on my like Alexa. It's so funny. So yeah, and then like honestly, Forever 21, H&M, I got this one from Target. Like, but like all of my clothes, like I had to decide what to wear for this podcast. Like, there's so many outfits, like options to choose from. But like, I was so excited to see that like Forever 21 and H&M are like making these things because like NASA allowed for their logo to be repurposed everywhere. And so it's like everyone wants to wear space stuff. And it's so incredible. There's so many designers, honestly, this year that are going to do it. Like, oh my gosh, it's so crazy.
That's exciting. There's gonna be all kinds of different fashion runway stuff from what's going on. But okay, did they not used to have their logo released? Like, did they not do it until like a few years ago?
You know, I don't quite know, but it was very difficult to get a NASA logo like anywhere unless you actually went to NASA Kennedy Space Center, and they would just have it like a sticker like on a boring t-shirt, and I was like, oh, like this is not fashion. And you know, I love dressing up, and I'm like, this is so boring. And I'm like, maybe if I cut off the sleeves and like tie it up or something. And so then all of a sudden everyone started seeing it. So I don't know if it was a more recent thing or it's just that brands started realizing that they made it available. But NASA like is so open to the public, so open. Their website, they have like thousands of raw images taken from space that people can just download for free and like edit it or render it themselves. Like they can do all their like pictures of galaxies, nebulae, Jupiter, and then they can just download all these images for free and like just edit it. You know, they can like add in like different colors, they can enhance it, they can do all this stuff, and they make all this available. It's like everyone, it's like insane. There's so much data out there. That's just like free and available to like everyone. So I think their logo may have been available, but maybe it just wasn't catching on so much, which is why I'm actually a big fan of what Elon Musk is doing for just the public eye, you know?
Yeah.
Like he launched a Tesla.
He's amazing. Like he said something about how I think he said more people that are smart need to be like entrepreneurs. Cause there's a lot of people, when you think of people that are smart, yes, definitely like astrophysicists, people that go to space, but you usually think about like doctors and lawyers.
Yeah.
You know? And he was like, some of those people need to think about other options and creating things and creating stuff to make a change in the world and use their smarts for that. And I was like, this man raises a good point.
It's so true. I think that that's a big thing that I'm actually kind of hoping we see sort of like an innovative increase after COVID, because the last time people were in quarantine is when we were seeing huge developments of like apps that are now like changing our lives. I think Venmo was created like in the last quarantine. I think it was like maybe during swine flu, if there was a quarantine. I don't quite remember, but the human history has shown that like a lot of this alone time allows for not only creative thought, but like innovation. And especially too, like a lot of people were actually like laid off, and it made them reconsider like, what is life? What is my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And, you know, and I encourage anyone who experienced that to, of course, first, like find your, you know, your government benefits, find ways to actually survive, and then find ways to really think about what it is that you have something special to contribute to the world, and how you can create that into a new brand or company or something. Because yeah, Elon Musk is 100% right on that.
Right. I love that. I like this. I don't know if it's a saying, but I feel like everyone's purpose is really to do something to contribute to society in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people neglect doing what makes them money for what they're passionate about. And everyone's passion usually leads to doing some kind of good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's,
it's
crazy because sometimes people get lost in the sauce of money rather than impact.
Yeah, completely. And I think that there's two views I have on that. One is it's understandable. Like I 100% agree with that, you know, and I think that right now, the reason I've become such a huge risk taker is because I don't have dependents, and like I am on my own, and that like my family is healthy and safe. And I think that if any of those factors were different, I 100% would not be doing what I'm doing right now. I would 100% be locked into like a job just to be able to support my loved ones and as well as myself. But I think that, you know, figuring out ways to actually set that up for yourselves and your family and your loved ones is the important way to sort of strategize, I think, for the future. But I do think, you know, like, and we've heard this so many times about, you know, currency and money and its creation and how it was made and what the real value actually is of it. What's the value of gold? Like, what's the value of any of that? And I like a couple of years ago, I think, is when I started to sort of like repeat affirmations to myself to say, like, I will never have another argument about finances. I will never have another argument about finances, like over and over again, because the relationships that get damaged through finances are that's not worth it. You know, it's not worth to lose a relationship or friendship over something that is a entity that was created by people not smarter than us, like a you know, societal corporation, by people, bankers, guys who said, hey, let's actually say that there's a value of this chicken, and let's instead put, you know, the chicken and the gold together, and let's say that this chicken is worth this much gold, and instead of you carrying all your gold around, I'm going to store it in my closet, and I'm going to give you a piece of paper that says this is how much money you have in my closet. And then that's what transitions into bills, and then checks, and then eventually, you know, safety deposit boxes, and there's like this whole thing. And it's just, there's this documentary called Money as Debt, and it's so good. You have to watch it. Anyone watch it right now? Like, it's so fascinating. It gives you a totally different perspective, I think. Yeah, it's just on YouTube also. It's like free on YouTube. I think there's like 2 different versions too, or two, a sequel to the first one. But it's fascinating. And I think you view your life very differently, and understanding like investment, understanding things that we weren't really taught in school, you know, and what investment really actually means. Like, wow, what are the different ways to invest? You don't just pour money into the stock market. There's other ways to do that. And so it's really important. But I think, I think that hopefully, you know, a lot of people will start to come together and realize that, like, I'm definitely like still on my journey. Like, I'm not like, oh yeah, like I'm sad. No, oh my gosh, you kidding me?
I don't think the journey ever stops.
It doesn't. You're right. It doesn't stop. Yeah. There's more factors that get added on into the layers of our life. But it's like, then you wonder what is the purpose of us experiencing life in this physical form? You know, it's because of the things that, sorry, was that super deep? What is the purpose of experiencing life in this physical form? Snoopy over here is just like, what?
That's crazy.
Yeah, I've been questioning a lot about reality and everything recently. It's been insane. There's a book called The Holographic Universe that is just like such a good book. I'm actually still working on it. I'll end up in rabbit holes so many times, and I'll like stop the book, and then I'll go into researching it and into like a theory that they talk about. But it gets us to kind of see what life truly actually is when you break it down to like, you know, beyond atoms, when you break it down to like a interference pattern, and what we all actually are, and how we're reflecting off of one another. And that the light that's bouncing off of you right now, even though you're through a screen, it's being absorbed by my eyes. Like I'm forever
Right.
going to have the photons that bounce off of you and were received into my eyes and my corneas for the rest of my life. Every single human being, we become part of them, whether we like it or not, just by simply looking at one another. And that's actually why I think we had this collective realization about things so many times at the same time. And I hope, like, especially right now with everything going on, I hope that this is that moment where we're all having a collective realization that we should have had already, that should have worked on. But I think that it finally, something needed to shake us up, to finally smack and be like, wake up, let's fix this, let's find a solution. Like, it's about time. You know, our generation's old enough now to make a big impact. You know? And yeah, so it's crazy. Sorry, I know I keep going into
No, you're good. I also think, what is it called? Technology. I think technology is like a big factor into educating people really quickly. So now you see the youth advocating for all these causes, and elder people, not saying all of them, but they're usually a little bit slower to get on trends. And that's because when they were growing up, there was no education as quick, as fast, and at the fingertips as there is today.
Completely. I think that it had to go through so many filters in order for the information to even get to them.
Right.
It had to go through the filter of media. What was media when it was even created?
Right.
It was media was the whole point, was the printing press. It was to actually put data somewhere so people could visualize and see it.
Right.
But yeah, people back in the day, like, they would get information through like their parents, their teachers, their friends, or what they see on TV, which was also through multiple filters. Their parents and teachers and friends would get that information also through the newspaper, which was filtered, all of that. And so I think now there's this rawness that's happening. It's so raw, it's so pure, it's so like real, because you think, what are the intentions of random Joe Schmo sharing a video that's important? He's not trying to do it for growing his company. No, he's doing it because it's important. Right. But what is the purpose of, a big news corporation sharing this news? To get, like you said earlier, viewership, to get people watching. And so there's always going to be that filter of what is more important, the truth or the viewership. But with people that are sharing online, they don't have that view. There's that filter where has been removed. That lens has been removed, and we're seeing things differently.
Right.
Crazy.
It's beautiful. I do have one question that I bet a lot of other people have. Do you think that we really sent people to the moon the first time?
Yes, completely. Because if we didn't, think about it. During that time, there was like a lot of rivalry with France, with Russians.
Yep.
If we really didn't send them to the moon, anyone to the moon for the first time, they would have definitely figured that out and been like, liars. They would have been like, no, we did it first. Ha, ha, ha. So there would have been that whole situation. We were not allies at that time.
That's true.
They were rivalries. They were like in competition. So think about it, if you're running in a race and like you somehow like maneuvered all the way around this way, and then we're like, okay, I'm done. That person would have like, the other teams would be like, oh, I got lots of friends over there. They saw you didn't actually go. They'd be like, we saw that you cut the finish line or whatever, and that you didn't actually, whatever it was, And so there were so many eyes on the moon at that time. Like the Russians actually went to space before the US. We just went to the moon first. And it was Yuri Gagarin, which is celebrate his day on April 12th. But when that happened, like there was already eyes on the moon. There was eyes everywhere. And so if we didn't get to the moon, they for sure would have called us out and been like, no, this is not true. This is fake. This is they would have said that, Yeah. And so, but anyway.
That's funny.
That's my view. I definitely know we went to the moon.
Yeah. Cause I still to this day see people, talking about it. I still hear about it. People are like, oh, that's an animation, or, oh, blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, it's probably like a studio, all different types of stuff. And people, want to debate and talk about it. I'm like, I honestly have no clue. I was like, I don't have enough research evidence to prove either fact. So I'm like, I'm just gonna ask somebody who probably knows.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many factors to it as well, and it's just like, I think for those who truly do not know and they really are questioning it, try to get in contact with the people that have been there. Like, there are astronauts that have been to space, that have been to the moon, that like are still alive today that you can talk to. Like, even like the astronauts that talk to those astronauts, their family members, like the people that actually went. And also to be dumping billions of dollars into something that we have physical evidence of these spacecraft, like of the space shuttles, of the Apollo mission that have been to space. Like, you know, we have the physical bodies here, you
Right.
know, and even though the space shuttles did not go to the moon, it was, you know, the Saturn V rocket during Apollo, all of that. It's, you know, I think that people truly do enjoy, there's like this seduction of like conspiracy theories, I
Oh,
think. You know, it's totally seductive for a lot of people, and it, you know, gets you thinking, which I understand. You know, people were natural philosophers, but I think that rather than making accusations, I think everyone should do a lot of research and
yeah.
try to comprehend, okay, like, why would they? First question should be why?
Right.
Why do it? You know, I know there is history of, like, you know, all the governments having, like, you know, lies in the news. There's been governments where, like, you know, like whatever, like, they're, you know, they're a corrupting power, but there's so many moments where, like, it was a real thing. There's so many things that happened through governments that were truly legitimate, and the moon is one of them. Like,
Yeah.
humans did go to the moon, and if they don't believe that, then you know what? Go to do the Artemis program. Apply to be an astronaut. They are recruiting people for astronauts right now to be part of the Artemis program. Apply and go for yourself.
Let
Like,
them know.
do it. You literally, like, you can actually do it. You can apply and you can learn on your own to go.
Yeah.
But look out resources.
Yeah, you can do it. So that's what I heard from you. And I also heard you earlier say that you didn't think that you could be an astrophysicist. So what is your message to other people that want to be these things that they put such high credentials on, they don't think they can attain?
I would say surround yourself with people that believe in you.
Mm.
That's the first thing. And it can be really hard. Like, I've had family that literally were like, are you sure you're smart enough to do that? And, like, you know, I've heard it. I've heard it all.
Yeah.
I've had friends say it. I've had, like, a lot of, you know, a lot of put downs. But I think it's about knowing, like, surrounding yourself with people that truly do believe in you. If you have friends that don't, or family that don't, look at those communities that exist in that, like, industry, like clubs, or like book meetings, or, like, I don't know, meetups at bars, or go to, like, volunteering at museums that, like, teach the curriculum, and surround yourself with people like that.
Yeah.
When I truly wanted to test myself to see if this was something I really wanted to do, I volunteered at the Intrepid Museum for 2 years, at the Space Shuttle Enterprise, to really learn, do I actually want to talk in front of the public? Do I want to be a public speaker? Do I want to educate the public? And I was standing this close to everyone, like this close, you know, and talking to people. And so that's when I realized this is something I definitely want to do. But way before that, when I was conducting research in college, like, yeah, it was really hard. Like, and, you know, and the thing is, actually, so I did lots of years of research, but because of the modeling career, which we actually didn't even get into, I actually had stepped away from university. So I did not obtain my degree. That is something I do let everybody know. I actually did not obtain my degree. So that is something really important. Reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I believe so much in advocating why this is important, while still obviously pursuing my career as a fashion model. Like, I'm not a researcher right now. I did my years of research, and right now I'm no longer conducting research. I'm not feeding into, at least, like, the research portion, but that's because the science industry they have a huge lack of like, you know, people advocating for it. They have a huge lack of, like, news and media outlets. They have a huge lack of, like, being in the public eye. Not a lot of people are in the public eye talking about why this stuff is so important and why it's cool. And, like, that's super important. So I'd say also, like, you know what your mission is. And I think that that's what I had to decide, is I was like, what is my mission? Like, do I want to pursue actually full time being a researching astrophysicist, or do I actually want to try and fill in that gap that we have right now of trying to educate the public, or inform the public? I like to use the term inform, rather. Inform and communicate to the public why this is important, and try to inspire others to go into it, because that's where there's a bigger lack, and that's where I have a stronger skill set.
Yeah.
So I think recognizing also where your skill set is. I think recognizing where you want to make that change, and what it is you want to do, and then find a way to actually do it. I think that's huge, because I think, you know, when I first started with, like, going into research, I'm like, the only option I have is to be a researcher. The only option I have is to be, you know, in front of a computer screen for 10 hours a day coding. And then I realized that is not the only option. I can actually get in front of the public eye. I have a lot of energy. I love talking to people. I love talking to kids and connecting with them. And I think that if I can have one conversation on an airplane, one conversation in a cafe, and one conversation with like a kid in a museum about why space is important, those are 3 lives that I possibly just, inspired to actually go and pursue that career.
Right.
And I think that pinpointing what exactly it is you want to do for the world is how to figure out how to actually do it. So yeah, it's crazy. And the thing is too, is it's not even over. Like
Right.
I 100% see myself going back to school. I'm probably not actually going to go back for astrophysics because I've been doing courses online on my own just because they're available through like Stanford University, like constantly updating myself on the new theories in astrophysics.
Right.
But like to go back and do maybe like electrical engineering to go into rocket development, because that is the way to space, is through building rockets. And I want to be able to feed that system for the future of the kids, of the future generations that will be traveling on that rocket. And I know that that's something that I have the skill set to do, but right now that's not my calling. Right now my calling is to be an advocate. And so I think it's recognizing that it's not always going to be just one thing.
Wow. That's crazy. I had no idea. Like, I was like, she probably has a doctorate's degree and all this stuff, but if you're passionate about it and you educate yourself on it, you can be an advocate for anything.
Yeah.
You just need to be informed about it. That's huge. I'm Miss Indiana right now, preparing for Miss USA. Yeah.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. And one of the questions that they ask me is, do you think you need to go to college nowadays to have a successful life and career? And a lot of the times, I mean, I've gotten asked multiple times and like thought about different answers, and I always lean more towards you don't have to. And it's because you can really start whenever, at any age. Someone could start if they're 15 and super passionate about astrophysicist information and technology and research. They can start researching it and then going on their Instagram like you are and talking about it. Make sure all your facts are right. Make sure you're educating people and not just putting out your opinions, but people can really start doing anything. Photographers, you don't have to go to school. Just start doing it about trial and error. Models, you don't have to go to a modeling school. It bothers me that people make money off of young girls telling them that they need to go to these modeling schools and modeling classes. No, you don't. You can figure it out on your own, trial and error, research. It's huge and it's important because that stuff just sucks money and resources.
Yeah, completely. And like trial and error, that's one of my favorite terms. I love that you just use that, because that's what I chose to do when I was so like specific about actually going and finishing my degree. And at that time got scouted for America's Next Top Model and was like talking to my mentor. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do. I'm like, because this can be great, but I don't really care about modeling, but I care about, performing and acting. And I'm like, maybe this can open, that realm, or understanding how to communicate better to people with my research. And he's like, why don't you do a trial and error? You take off one semester of college, see what happens with the modeling career. And if it doesn't work out, go back to school. If it does work out, figure it out later. So essentially I had to figure it out later. Like 5 years passed, I had to figure it out later. And then that's when I decided I'm going to start doing courses online, because for me, the sole purpose is to inform the public, like you said, rather than conducting the research. If you want to be a doctor, you need your degree. If you want to do something that has to do with humans' lives, with like saving them and everything like that, you have to get a degree for sure.
Yes.
Doing engineering, if you're going to be building like things, rockets, like electronics, you'll need a degree for sure, just because there's fundamentals there. But 100%. I do think as far as like going along this more of an entrepreneurial path, you do have sources online where you can actually educate yourself. I mean, I've been using Coursera for like 3 years now. And I've just been going through course. And you go through, I mean, these are from Harvard University. They're from Ivy Leagues, Stanford. I've been doing them from like Arizona State University. It's from high-end universities. And so it's really high-end like curriculum, and you get exams. You have to do tests. You get worksheets. So I've been doing that completely on my own. And I think the reason a lot of people are against that is because that takes a lot of discipline. Discipline, because not only are you doing those classes, but you're also running a business on the side. You're also trying to, for me, I always like, going on photo shoots, creating content about space, doing my exam by the evening, and then like trying to do a random like catering job at the time. Like, you know, it
Right.
was just insane. This was like years ago. And so it's this constant juggle, and a lot of people don't have that, I think, you know, belief that they can endure through it, but you can, and we all can. And it's just about believing that you can and putting it on your walls, having your friends encourage you. So I think that that's, you know, it's so important with the people that you surround yourself with. It really is. You know, look up Facebook groups of people that have the similar interests as you and make friends through that. Like I said, if you have like family or friends that don't believe in what you want to do, like find those that are already doing it and like, you know, find advice from them.
Yes, 100%. Oh my gosh. I feel like I've learned literally so much just from this past, however long it's been that we're talking. Like, thank you so much for coming on here. And thank you so much for informing everyone about space and what you're passionate about and how to get over that hump of feeling discouraged, feeling like you can't do it and doing it. Like you were such a bright example of that. And it's so fun to look at your Instagram because you can see your passion literally shining through every post of yours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's just great stuff.
Sorry, keep going.
No, all I was going to say is that like space is already incredible. Like I feel like we don't need to actually make it any more amazing than it already is.
Right.
It's just putting it out there, you know, and people will know that it's amazing.
So true. I like to ask all of my guests, what is your favorite quote to end on? Just like a banger to leave with.
My favorite quote. Oh, there's so many good ones. You know, just to kind of put one out there, then wait, let me actually really think about it, because there's one on my wall right now, a huge one, that says she believed she could, so she did. I think that's pretty applicable to right now. And yeah, I purchased that right when I was like going through kind of a huge turning point in my career, and like thinking I need to go back to school. I was like, I don't know if I should be taken seriously. Like, I don't know if any of that. And then I was like, I believe I can. I believe I get the discipline to inform myself and fact check, like you said, double check the data and spread that awareness. So she believed she could, so she did.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for your mission to inform people. Like, such an idol in so many ways, shapes, and forms. I would have loved to be a little girl looking up at a freaking astronomicist Barbie and seeing her make these posts and be cool and informative and fun and just something where I can almost see myself reflected. You know, you see all these men like showing things, and it's awesome to see women doing that and while being yourself. Like, you're wearing a pink, cute space like jacket in NASA. I love it. I'm here for all of it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Alexis. This has been incredible.
Thank you too. And anybody watching or listening, please rate it 5 stars, write a comment, write a review. It really does help. I'm still starting out, so all the love is appreciated.
I love it. Yay!